for a bit, because sometimes I notice it kicks in and I've already started chatting. So we're back. We are live now.
That's gone really quick. Good luck. I will duck in.
Okay, could I say good evening and a warm welcome from Table Tennis Scotland. Our guests tonight have all played a major part in the success story that is Aberdeen and the North over many decades, should I say. Tonight we have coach Max Singer, player David Lowe, and umpire and historian Charlie Flint, BEM. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, David.
Good.
You're very kind.
Right. What I would like to do is there's a person who is not on the screen who has put this all together, and that is Donald Pirrie. And Donald, thanks for all your help in putting this show together. And I know you're in the background there, and it'll be Donald who will be picking up your comments and your messages on the chat line. So a big thanks there for Donald. Right, as we always do at the start of these shows, it's birthday time. If anybody's had a birthday in the past week or the next week, I'd like to wish you happy birthday to Elisa Khalid, one of our senior internationals. And Elisa has also been a very active panelist on these Monday night Zoomcasts. So happy birthday, Elisa. Now, I believe, Charlie, you've got a birthday.
Yeah, I've got to wish happy birthday to Dick Farrow, who's one of our local coaches and administrators. Dick's going to be 75 on Wednesday.
Wow.
And I have to say, the following day, I'm going to catch up with him. I'm going to be 75 on Thursday.
Yeah.
So happy birthday to Dick and to myself.
Right. So when was your wife's birthday, Charlie?
Yeah, my wife's birthday was on Saturday.
Oh, well.
She was 75 as well.
So if Mrs. Flint's listening, he's mentioned everybody's birthday apart from yours. So no tea tonight, Charlie, I'm afraid.
David, I haven't had my tea yet, so I might get it later.
Fine, okay. David, have you got any birthdays you'd like to wish?
My mother is, it's her birthday this Friday, but I hope she's not listening because I don't know how old she is.
Okay. Right, Max, have you got any birthdays wishes for anybody?
I haven't, I'm afraid, unfortunately.
Okay, well done. Well, brilliant. Right, we've got such a lot to do in this next hour, and I've already had a briefing with the guys, and I'm really excited. But I'm going to start with Charlie Flint first. Who's going to give us a potted history, which we're going to stop on various slides of table tennis Aberdeen, and this is long before Max Singer started coaching, and nobody's going to believe that, by the way. And even before David started playing, and nobody's going to believe that either. Right, Charlie, I don't know whether you want to say a few words or do you just want to get straight into the slideshow?
No, I'll just say by way of background, my knowledge and interest in the history has all been, it's not been lived, it's been learned history, whereas Max and David, they've lived through the history and created the history. Whereas I've absorbed it and contributed little bits and pieces on the way, but it's been what I've gathered over the years. And one of the triggers for it was I read something that Arthur Anderson he had put a little story out. Well, poor guy's away now, but a good number of years ago, and that triggered my interest. And being interested in history and family history, I embarked on this some years ago. So that's what got me started. So anyway, I'll put up the first slide once we get it.
We're looking forward to it, Charlie.
Yeah. Now where are we? Come on now. It needs to go to the start from the beginning. There we go. Right. Well, table tennis in Aberdeen. There had been ping pong had been played. I saw references to ping pong in 1900 and 1901, little competitions, but it bounced off in 1933 basically because of the lads club's involvement. The lads club, they were the trigger, and they organised things from the beginning. But the YM came in pretty quickly thereafter. So the first league season was in 1934, and I think this was only a friendly game. It was Aberdeen FC versus YMCA in 1934. But the slides there to show the style, the gentlemen with his suit and the gentlemen with their collars and ties, all sitting almost on top of the table. So that's how it was in the early days. Very narrow rooms and very cosy. So the Lads Club in 1936 shows the amount of boys that were interested. I think that's maybe Mr. Ogden at the far end. And I think the chap at this end is a guy called Edwards, who was the first winner of the North Open, which started in 1934. And he was an Aberdeen FC player as well. And when the league started in 34, Aberdeen FC joined the league for the first year, but it was probably too much like hard work for them, and they gave up after that. So, but I think they came in back once, much later on. They were back for a season or so. Anyway, we used to call it ping pong. That's again at the Lads Club, just to shows you what the playing facilities were like and the enthusiasm. And that's the North Open. As I said, it started in 1934, and it became a very popular event. Dundee people patronised it quite significantly and quite often took away some of the silverware. Aberdeen did the same. They went south to the Midlands, to the Midland Open. And so there was a good rivalry between Aberdeen and Dundee. It would expand further to intercity trophies, but that would be in the 50s before that probably came around. Now, this is a famous superstar here in his youth. His name is Victor Garland. So he was a Scottish internationalist for many a year thereafter. Great rival of Eddie Stills, as we'll see later.
Charlie, can I just stop you there, only for a couple of seconds, for all our younger viewers that I always have encouraged to watch this. That net would have been 6.5 inches high. That they, if you like, it's only been 6 inches high. I'm not too sure of the year, but that net is 1/2 inch higher than the one we play today. So over back to you.
Yeah, can I just, talking about the table, something I came across, there was World Championships in 1935 or 6 in London, and one of the tables that was used in the championships was sent to Aberdeen for use in the North Open of that year, which is really quite, somebody must have had a lot of influence to get a championship table sent north to Aberdeen for the North Open. So some members, that's young Garland again. Sorry, I've just skipped there too quick, and I've not all the technology to go back. That's the North Confined Trophy, called the Rubber Shop Trophy, 1939, and it's still contested today, and it still looks as good. So,
Charlie, did table tennis cease in September with the start of the war, do you know, or did it carry on?
Organised table tennis ceased as such, but I think, as you'll see from the next slide probably, there was, in 1941, the North Open continued. I think it missed a couple of years, but it continued almost every year. The next slide is, or the next slide is the dance in 1940. The thing that intrigues me about this photograph from, I think it's a Bonnecourt Hotel, is up in the right-hand corner, there's a table, what looks like a table tennis bat.
Yeah.
I don't know how that got there or what the significance of it is, but this was taken from a newspaper, obviously. Now that's the opening of the North Scotland Table Tennis Tournament at the Lads Club in, I think it's 41. So it was still going on during the war. And the next slide shows the ARP. Now, air raid precaution was a very much a feature during the war, and they had posts, and this was a contest between two rival posts. They did. It says it had the Eastern Division of the Table Tennis League, so the league must have been going on, but I've never been able to find information about the results. Moving on from there, that takes us to 1944. If I just hold it, that's Bob Thompson. He was the father of the Thompson boys that would make a big mark on table tennis in Aberdeen about 20 years later. Anyway, in 1943, there was Richard Bergman came and played in Aberdeen in an exhibition match at the music hall. And he had been the world champion from 1939. So Aberdeen was it was obviously in the services, and I think there was an international match between some service people on both sides. So UK and Allied forces. Moving on, that's a photograph of Aberdeen players paying an annual visit to the Lads Club, and they're going to have a match. I'm not sure. I think the Aberdeen players are on the right-hand side. I think they're tossing a coin there. We've jumped on to 1946, and that's a table tennis tournament with Victor Garland, a Mr. Gray, who's I'm not familiar with, and Mr. McRobbie, who was a winner at one point, and George Duncan, who was another local celeb. That's George Duncan. That's the Rubber Shop Cup. Oops, sorry, I just went too fast there. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to go back that one. Donald could put me. But anyway, he was getting presented with the Rubber Shop trophy, which had been for the confined singles, but it was used as a team competition trophy for a short period of time. Anyway, that's 1947, and Garland in the middle. Now, in 1949, the North Open, the chap holding the trophy, and Mr. Garland's looking at it quite enviously, is a chap called Dr. I think it was Robert Burns, R. Burns anyway, from Lark Hall. And the lady who's shaking hands with him is Helen Elliott.
Wow. We
know her as Helen Hamilton, a lot of us, but Helen Elliott, she could compete with them all. No problem for Helen. Now, this fellow is a guy called Fred Wilson, and he was obviously a bit of a player in his time, but he was instrumental in schools table tennis. Really, he was power behind the throne in schools table tennis for a long time.
Yeah, he was played at the Gallagher and the school table tennis under 13 level, and I won it. It was a long time ago, maybe in the 50s.
Wow.
Indeed.
Yeah.
This photograph was put in because it's Arthur Anderson. Arthur was in the services and he was in North Africa in 1944, and there was an article in the evening, maybe the P&J, or maybe in the Evening Express, making reference to him being a finalist in a competition out in North Africa. So, and there was also a thing in it. Victor Garland was a flight sergeant in the RAF, and he was involved in a crash, and there was a story in the press about him. He survived, and but it was amazing how much interest there was in all the table tennis personalities at that time. That's probably early 50s, I would say. And I think that might have been in Dundee, because the photograph was taken by someone from Forfar, so it may have been at the Midland Open in Dundee. Another action photograph of Arthur. The thing that intrigued me here was on the left-hand side is obviously the sun. That must be sunlight coming into the room, which I don't think it can be anything else, which surprised me. But there's a motley crew. Arthur Anderson again. I'm not sure who the fellow on the left is. George Duncan, Fred Wilson, and Victor Garland. All very smart, but all playing in long trousers by the looks of things. That was in 1950 at the YM, the start of the North Open, I think. All very proper. I think this fellow was the umpire. Eddie Still was a name to contend with from the late 40s through to the early onwards. And that's him admiring his trophy. The chap that he's he had beaten was a guy called Ron Foreman from Dundee. As I said earlier, the rivalry between Dundee and Aberdeen was two-way.
Yeah.
Elgin sometimes came into the fray as well.
Can I just stop you there for a minute, Charlie? I think,
Yeah, mate.
David, you were saying, did you say Eddie Stills was your PE teacher, David?
It was Matt, actually.
Oh, Matt, he was your PE teacher.
Yes, he was for, I think, for 1 year, I believe. And
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good teacher.
Were you Max, were you
Very
playing
disciplinary.
table tennis at the time, or was it general PE?
No, I was playing table tennis at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, then. Sorry about that, Charlie. If you don't
No,
mind.
not at all. Not at all. That's Bob Thompson again.
Yeah.
Triangle Club was formed in 1948, and they became very influential as the years went on. But YM at that point was the dominant organisation, and continued to play quite a role. Sponge bat was a bit of an issue, but Eddie still managed to overcome the hoodoo by beating a guy called Johnny Miller, who was an exponent of the new style bat, to win the West Scotland title in 1955. So fair spread for Eddie Still.
Yeah, well done.
Now that's the Aberdeen Lads Club tournament. The Lads Club started a Christmas tournament in the 50s. A January tournament in the 50s, and it went on for probably 25 years. That's the lads gathered there looking at the draw. I'm not sure whether that's John Lowe.
We were just saying that, Max. It does look like him.
I would say it probably was. Do you want to speak to
Well,
Yeah,
I want to show some of those photos to him, Charlie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, David, John Lowe, famous goalkeeper. Tell us about him.
I mean, I probably should know more. He's 86 and still going strong. We were there last night, me and Max, watching the last round of the USPGA, drinking too much and putting bets on. But he was Highland League. You probably know more about the teams. But I think for about 10 years, he had the most successive sort of games without missing.
He was bucking thistle in Elgin City, and he played once for Aberdeen FC.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the most amazing facts about him was the consecutive, managed to go season after season, being ever present, staying injury free, and it's still a record today.
Yeah, and he was quite a good table tennis player. He was one of the influences I would have had in my early years. He played with Brian Morgan and Matt Singer at one stage as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
In Aberdeen.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so back, Charlie.
Okay. That's Garland keeping his single titles. The Garland Still rivalry was pretty strong.
Yeah.
Garland again, too good for Eddie Still, but Eddie would get his revenge.
Yeah.
So the move to the sponge bat was certainly coming. That was in the mid.
I mean, in fairness, there was an outcry worldwide after Japan.
Yeah.
Had us at the World Championships, and nobody could play again. In fairness, it was very difficult to play with anyway. So it quickly came in and it quickly went out.
Yeah.
Not without controversy, though.
This was an article about Aberdeen beating Glasgow in the Intercity event in 1958. Yeah. And Ian Fraser and the chap at the bottom is Bert Park. Ian Fraser, was that a name known to yourself, Max?
Yes, and there was two Frasers. There were brothers, two Frasers played table tennis.
Right.
I do remember them. I was very young at the time. Bertie Park was a very, very good player.
Aye. Okay, I'm conscious of the time, and I'll try and spin on.
No, it's fine. Honestly, you might want to race through, but we might as well go on a bit more because.
Sure. That was good performances by Aberdeen players, but when you read the article, all the singles titles went back to Dundee. So,
right.
So that was pretty good of the press to put in that. Garland. Well, now this is an interesting one. They were the centre of local controversy because Vic Garland and Eddie Stowe wanted to be considered for international honours without registering to play in the league. And I think that was pretty much frowned upon.
Yeah.
So some of the other leading players were not happy about it.
Yeah.
So
change times, yeah.
Yes. One of the things I saw was an article in the late 40s when it was a Scottish team going to Paris, and the tenor of the article was that the STTA had put out a letter to the associations asking if anybody who could play and afford £25 to join the team. So it was the article was reading, play international table tennis for £25. They didn't have enough funds to fund people, and people were going to have to fund themselves. Not all of them. I think they could fund 3. But anyway, interesting times. That's Bert Park and Frank still, and Doug Sinclair, who's still playing to this day. And the other fellow on the right-hand side is a guy called John Oxton, who was a good friend of and rival to John Lowe. And John was an Aberdeen goalkeeper at one point, and he was a Huntly goalkeeper in his later years. So, and the Dons keeper loses in the final of the singles. He lost to Doug Sinclair.
John Ogston also signed for Liverpool FC.
Yeah.
Wow.
Aye. I knew John on a personal basis. John and Bob Shankly did not get on.
All right, okay.
So that's why, and he got farmed out to Doncaster, where Laurie McMenemy was the manager at the time.
Right.
So, but then he came back north to and played Highland League for Huntly.
No.
That's a quick one of Frank still. Bertie Park again. Now, George Angus, brother of Kathy Angus, alias Kathy Knowles.
Yeah.
Donald Campbell and Brian Morgan.
Young Brian Morgan, yeah.
They were winning the National Union of Boys Club trophy, Scottish Association of Boys Clubs trophy. Again, that's John Lowe. It was really just to show the playing conditions.
Yeah.
That was, I'm not sure exactly where that was, but it was a tight venue anyway.
Okay.
21 years on from the foundation of Triangle, that's the 21st anniversary. Frank Still, Bob Thompson, and the young Thompsons in front, and Jack Jimison there. So that was 21 years on from the in November 1969. That's Kathy Knowles, Kathy Angus. Yeah, she was a bit of a superstar in her time.
Yeah.
Around the same time as Richard.
Yeah.
Now, this is quite in 1975. 11 Aberdeen table tennis stars off to compete for Scotland against England in the Schools International at Cleveland. Quite an achievement. Quite an achievement. That's John Moyer at the end.
Yeah, again. Yeah. He's a camera hogger, isn't he, John Moore?
Which one's Alan Matthew? Which one?
Michael Stewart.
Wendy. Where's Wendy? I can see her. Yeah, Wendy Smith.
Yeah. Fantastic.
She used to help with the coaching.
Yeah, indeed.
Wow.
That's a picture at large. That's a young Matthew, probably Alan.
Yeah.
Arthur Anderson, Donald Campbell with the resplendent hairstyle. I'm not sure what the other fellow is.
It looks like a coat.
Triangle side face a big test. That's Roger Clark and Donald Campbell.
Yeah.
That's one of the Thompson boys, Robert Thompson.
Okay.
Young Charlie Matthew. Now that's the Harlaw girls who were the Scottish champions. Quite an achievement. Brian Morgan. Morgan takes Swifts to the top, and there's another superstar in the next slide. You recognize this one, everybody?
Yeah. There's Max. Yeah.
Max Singer.
Unbeaten performance for Swifts.
Beautiful.
Shocking.
That's the Powis Academy team winning the inaugural Schools League trophy, being presented. Michael Stewart being presented by Fred Wilson. Fred Wilson, as I said earlier, was involved in middle school and Frederick Street School and had done a lot to promote table tennis at that time. That's another Matthew Boy. Swifts moves to regain title. Our current league treasurer, Brian Robertson. Nice photo, Brian, if you watch this. That's the Aberdeen team that won the
Tom's on again. I'll give him some stick tomorrow.
There's Richard.
We've gone 25 minutes in the first picture of Richard Yule, 8 times national champion.
Yeah. His table tennis started with the Triangle and the Still family. You possibly know that. They took Richard along to the Borough Hall and got him involved as a youngster. And the rest of the
Yeah, I noticed this particular photo, Charlie, was December 77. So Richard would have just come back, well, not just come back, but he'd have been playing in Birmingham at the Worlds in 77, which was televised every single night, every night, a lot live, highlights most nights. Okay.
I got a lad's club photograph. This fellow here might be known to some. Any guesses, boys?
Mitch Reid.
Mitch Reid, yeah. We've got a more known photograph. I'm not sure who the other people are, to be honest.
Right next to him, who's the guy that had the pubs in Aberdeen?
Yes.
Right. Okay, then, Charlie, we'll move that one on.
Yeah. Norval Strachan and a few others going off to the Crystal Palace to represent the Scottish Association of Boys Club at the National Championships. Now, 78, 79, table tennis in Aberdeen at crisis point. And then the following week, the crisis was over.
Oh, well.
So it was just nobody had registered to play. So wasn't it all plain sailing?
Yeah, were they all watching? Charlie, were they all watching Forest winning the European Cup? Is that's why they didn't bother playing table tennis?
Yeah, could have been. I take it you're from Nottingham, are you?
That's my hometown, yeah.
At least you had a couple of good Scotsmen in the team.
This is one of your predecessors as a national coach.
Graham Davis, yeah. On a visit to Aberdeen.
And I'm not sure if you recognise this young Scally.
Yeah.
Is that the young David?
It looks like the young David.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go on another couple of minutes, Charlie, and then because we're coming to the era of David as a player.
George Keith.
Oh, yeah, well, George Keith, he sadly passed away a year or two ago, but he was incredibly instrumental in developing disability sport, not just in Aberdeen, but throughout Scotland. I mean, I coached with him, I'm sure Max did many times. An absolute gentleman, a pleasure to be with, very humble. And the reason disability table tennis has grown so much in Scotland, I would put it purely down to George Keith, absolutely a true gentleman.
He represented the UK at the Olympics.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
In I think it was Atlanta, in whatever year it was, in the disability sport. Right, I'm quite happy to hold it.
Excellent. Well, we've actually
there's a lot more modern ones, but perhaps for another time.
Yeah, or maybe if we've got time at the end, because we've moved into an era when a young David Lowe has obviously started playing table tennis.
Sorry, I've just slipped one on.
Yeah.
Northern Light. There he is. The boy David.
Excellent. Well, okay, do you want to just stop the slideshow for a little while then? And excellent. Well, that was fantastic and very timely. David, you've played table tennis virtually every level for Scotland. You've been consistently involved certainly in my 31 years, I've lived in Scotland, and now you're solely coaching. But how did your story begin?
It was actually at school. I was at Bridgedawn Academy. First year there was a teacher, Mr. Curry, run a lunchtime club. I was a goalkeeper for the school and for Deeside Boys Club. Played a lot of golf, loved sport just in general. But got into the table tennis there. Kind of got a little bit hooked on it. My uncle played. I would say at about 12, started going to the YMCA, which was in the centre of Aberdeen. One of the coaches there was Charlie Matthews' dad. Can anyone remember his name? The dad. Charlie, can you remember Charlie Matthews' dad's name?
I've got a feeling his initial was A.
Can't remember. Charlie will kill me if I've forgotten. But he was one of the coaches. There was a lot of good players there. And as a youngster going along, it was so hard to even get on the table. I mean, watching the better players play was just kind of amazing at that time. And my granddad, which was John Lowe's father, built me a table. It wasn't quite full size. It was made of chipboard. And I had the net set just slightly too high. But all of that seemed to work in my favour, and I really got sort of hooked on it. To the extent by 13, 14, I was concentrating on the table tennis. Sort of giving up the goalkeeper route and not playing as much golf. So by 14, I was Scottish #1, won the Scottish title, playing against players like Gordon Waddell, met an awful lot of people through the sport. I was actually relatively shy at school as a person. So table tennis started to bring me out of myself. People probably surprised to hear that I was quite shy at an age, but going down to Glasgow, going down to tournaments, travelling to play, whether it was internationals against Wales, Ireland. You know, I remember befriending a young Andrew Dennison from Ireland. We were good friends. So you started to meet people, travel, and I just loved it. I mean, as a junior, I got to #1 as well when I was 16. But I played in 3 European Youth Championships as a junior, 1 in Austria, 1 in Belgium, and 1 in Holland. The first one was a shock to the system because I was only 14 at the time. But by the time I went to the second and the third, I was competing against the best in Europe and beating. I won over 50% of my games, I think, in the second and third European youths that I played in. So yeah, I mean, I'm a very competitive person, so it was something that I just got hooked on, you know, and I've been involved ever since. Really, Charlie spoke about the Rubber Shop Trophy, the North Confined. I was lucky enough, I think, to win that 11 times.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know, influences, obviously school, YMCA, my granddad, my uncle. When Clement Hall came along as well, Maxley was instrumental in setting that up, and it was virtually a full-time table tennis facility in Aberdeen, and we produced an awful lot of good players, young players from there. And we literally had the run of the hall, so of course there was no limit to, you know, how many times you could play. At that stage, we entered a British League team, and in 3 or 4 years we went from the 4th to the 1st division purely with Aberdeen players, which was really quite impressive. We weren't doing a drum chapel and taking players in from everywhere. It was players from the club that literally went from the 4th to the 1st division. So I make no secret of the fact that I was disappointed in my senior career. Everyone knows I had distractions, shall we say, when I got older. But I played in some good home internationals. I remember one at YouTube where we played against Ireland and at Drumchapel. And I managed to beat Jonathan Cowan in that one, who was a good player at the time. He just won a senior Irish tournament. I played in some European League matches, home internationals. But I'm enjoying the coaching still. We're at Aberdeen Sports Village, fantastic facility. We've got still, even now, me and Max speak all the time about the youngsters we have and who has potential and all the rest of it. And it's when we're together, even when we're not at table tennis, all we talk about is table tennis. So yeah, that's kind of a part of history.
Excellent. I'm just going to ask you a question. Don't know how good your memory is, but back in about 1991, you and one of you, Raymond Elder, came to Elgin to help me to do some schools demonstrations. Do you remember helping me for a couple of days?
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah. And when I got the kids, I normally say the 3 points and the third one, how does a goalkeeper stand? And I get one of the kids to come out and I said, imagine there's a goalkeeper receiving a penalty and that's your table tennis stuff. I wonder whether that helped you, David. The fact that you'd been a goalkeeper, you would have adopted that natural goalkeeping stance.
I think just in general, playing other sports, just the whole hand-eye coordination, movement, sporting ability, competing, learning to improve. I don't think there's any doubt that being involved in other sports helps.
Yeah. Good. We'll stop you there, and then we'll move over to Max. And Max, if you can get a bit closer to the mic when you start talking. Right, Max. Your longevity is legendary. When I first came to Scotland in 1990, that's where we first met at the McClymonds Hall.
Yeah.
You was the key coaching figure then in Aberdeen. You've obviously also coached Scotland teams with myself and other people. And 31 years later, nothing has changed. That same man is still at the helm. And I'm going to embarrass him now. I've got respect for everybody in table tennis, but I have so much respect for that man. I absolutely admire him.
How much does it cost me?
Right, Max. So where did it all start?
Well, it all started because there was a YMCA in Aberdeen, which was right in the centre of town. It was actually at the bottom of a place called D Street, which is just off of the Union Street. So I used to go down there for about 7 or 8 and play with a hard bat and pimples. And my elder brother, he sort of showed me some of the basics, and I just totally became fascinated and wanted to play the game. Had a reasonable success at the game. Won a few things here and there, like schools tournaments and things like that. But by the time I was getting to, I think it was 40 anyway, I think that was enough for me. And I thought I'd like to try and put something back at the game. And I really wanted to coach because at the time I felt Aberdeen wasn't doing so well as I probably think we should have. So that's why I really got involved. And the Aberdeen City Council let me use King Cross Sports Hall, where I got 6 players, that was all. And then they offered me to go to the Beach Leisure Centre, which is down where the beach ballroom is, which is slightly bigger. And that was very good. And then the one that really did it for me is when they offered us the McClymonds Hall. And on the basis that myself, Brian Morgan, and Ross Martin would run it, And they would shoot a lot of the cost, but we had to get people in there, had them doing just table tennis. They had a chat group there, they had karate, whatever. But it was really, in that place, I think we had 8 tables on the floor and 1 up on the stage. And it was like a bear pit. We just wanted to get on that table. If you were not, it's my turn now, it's my turn now. And we produced a lot of good players.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote down some here, like Nicol Craig. As far as I know, and I may find differently, he was the first kid who ever won the British Primary Schools from Aberdeen, Nicol Craig. Went on to other things and became a very good player. He certainly was in the top 10 of the men at one stage. Other players, Lewis Wilson, Nick Baxter, Stuart Matthew, Nat McGowan, Ross Martin, all good players. Probably I've missed out a few. But it was a great time there. I really did enjoy it, but it took its toll. I think I was doing there about 4 nights, maybe sometimes 5 nights a week. And after a number of years, it was a number of years, I decided I needed a break. And at the time, I'm not sure anybody was committed to take on the McClymonds Hall because it was a fair thing to take on. But it was enjoyable. I met some great kids, never had a problem in the place with their children. very good. Took a break, I think maybe 4 or 5 years, and this man sitting next to me, Donald Perry, asked if I would like to get involved with Aberdeen Sports Force along with Charlie Matthew. Then we went down and had a look at the place. I wasn't too keen, to be honest, when I was asked, but went down. This looks like a good place. So we got involved there, just with doing a Monday and a Friday, as Charlie Flint was doing, and we just talked about Dick Fairland, sorry. And then they asked if there was a job up to become the coach. Organise all, and I went for the interview to give me the job. Don't know how much is that, but never mind. And then it just sort of took off again, and we had produced a number of good players there. Tessa Yowles there, a little boy called Bluey Chen, Yiffy Pan, Joseph Bonadol, Ethan Chapman, Dylan Curley. Yeah. All very, very good players, and still are, especially Tessa, she's still there working hard. So that's really the basis of it all. The things I enjoyed as well when we went away and did, internationals, and there was like, looking after the junior team or whatever. The other one she pointed out, I think as well, that, I get this right, Gavin Runge and Stuart Matthew were in the team that played in the home internationals, which was held at Largs. And I think they were the first Scottish junior team to win the whole thing. Quite a number ago, but obviously Gavin Runge wanted great things. So yeah. So I was involved with a few things we used to do. We used to try and get a squad of maybe under 12 kids, we had about 20 girls and boys. We used the Bathgate and the parents would come up, drop them off, and they stayed in Bathgate for 2 nights. And I got all different coaches to come and help me from all over Scotland. One getting in it, and they weren't getting any money or nothing like that. Just asked me to help with this, and they did. Which was great. Even you and Walker, you came along to help as well. So I enjoyed all that sort of thing, working with different kids and I enjoyed working on the teams, when I was in Scotland, which was great. Made a few trips abroad, enjoyed it. But the story still goes on, and hopefully we will produce many more players like Harry Blackhall, who I think will be very, very good. I'm also lucky there. We've got a pool of about 10 coaches, and nobody gets paid, but they all help out. It's absolutely fantastic. So we've got some very good players and good coaches, Charlie Flynn, Dave's there 3 times a week, lots of others. So I've got a big pool of players, coaches.
Max, can I just ask you a question now?
Yeah.
It must have been just before COVID, and I was chatting to Natalie Gallen, and Natalie was saying that how much you've mentored her. Do you see your role to be the on-table coach with the players, or do you see your role as helping the younger coaches, and I say like David and Natalie, or do you see your role as both?
I like to get involved in both. Like to get involved in both. I'm very lucky with the players. We've got a couple of former international players helping us. Natalie got the final of the Scottish Championship for women's. Yeah. She's there, she's got shifts, but she's a nurse, but very helpful. I'm just so lucky to have all our people. So it makes a big, big difference. Big difference.
You've always managed to have, I think one of your main qualities is, difficult to list them, but is you've always had a good team behind you. What do you put that down to, Max? I'm going to close this door.
Charisma.
They maybe like me. Or I talk a good game.
You're good.
You run a good game as well.
Yeah. And who were your own influences, Max? Did you have early coaches yourself, or did you, as you were, obviously you would have been a young coach, were you looking up to other coaches or players, or did you just path your own?
Obviously, I admired somebody like Richard Yule, because, that was before I went into coaching. I used to practice a lot with him. Obviously, he was too good for me, but he wanted somebody to practice with, so I practiced with him. So, obviously, I I wish we could produce another player like Richard.
Yeah, yeah.
Which obviously we haven't been able to do, but we might do it someday. I just got enjoyed with every part of table tennis.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Okay, Charlie, have you got any questions for Donald or David?
No, I was just going to, a couple of things I'd like to say actually. Table tennis in Aberdeen has probably been about people and places. Now, Max is one of the main people, but behind Max, there was the likes of Terry Allen, who put in a power of work in the during the 90s. Mm-hmm. And Alison Woods has been our secretary for 34 years.
Yeah.
She was I think she was still at school when she started. Well, perhaps not, but 34 years commitment, and that's just unbelievable. And before that, there was Leslie Hamilton, and Arthur Anderson was president for about 20 years, and Max was president for about 20 years as well. As Max said, having a place like the McClimate Hall was just a reboost, and that got taken away from us to some extent because the council wanted it back for other purposes. But then the arrival of the Sports Village was a further boost, which is it's been great, really.
I remember coaching at the McClimate, and Max took me to the Ashvale, and he said, if you can eat the Ashvale whale, you get a free one. So I sat there and I finished it, and I was all really feeling good about it. And then the girl who was serving me said, I'm sorry, that was only half of it. True story, true story. Is that still there, David, the Ashvale?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Right. Is it still number one, Chippy? It's won it a few times, isn't it?
That's my business. It's number one. Free advertising. Lowe's Traditional Fish and Chips, West Hill and Aberdeen in Aberdeen. Okay.
It's fantastic.
Let's get that in there now. Okay.
Yeah, I could always attract coaches up to Aberdeen because I'd promised them an Ashvale Chippy at the end of the session. So
there was a lot of. Can I just say, David? There was a lot of sponsorship that was gained. Brian Morgan did a lot in organising sponsorship, as far as I remember, and there was a whole range of sponsors during the 90s, I should say. And David's even sponsoring himself now with that little chip shop he's got in West Hill.
Brilliant. Good on. Good on. So, Max, have you got any questions for these two?
I think so. I'll say that working with Donald Perry when he was working at the Aberdeen Sports Village was a real pleasure. Very helpful person. Ask him anything, he always try and help me. So I've been lucky with people who I work with, which I've enjoyed. So, just a compliment.
And David, have you got any questions for Charlie or Max?
Just to come back on the Max thing, I guess it's just how he is with people. You know, if you were to ask likes of me and Charlie, we don't necessarily have his patience. You know, so you might bring in some young kids that are obviously beginners. Max shows the patience, the understanding, and the influence with them, with their parents, to get them into the sport, to get them involved in the sport. And the amount of times, I'll be honest, there's times that we think, you know, really, is this going to fly with this particular person? And it does. And it does. And I'm the first to put my hand up and say, well, I'm surprised. And I have said that a number of times. But when Max shows that patience and influence and understanding over these people, it can have an effect on them. And it has an effect on everybody around them. So that is the key to success, I think, is that overall influence and always being there, ever present and ever understanding.
Well, this is a question for both Max and David. I think I'm going to start with David. Would you say your interest is strong now as it was from this young cadet winning all the national titles, or is it a different kind of an interest? Or
you know, there are times where me and Max, even recently, I spoke to Craig Howson about this recently, have struggled. And it's been about not our love for the table tennis, but finding people who have a passion for the sport. because that's what really gets us interested. You know, when you've got someone that's putting the effort in, whether or not they're going to be Scottish #1, if they're willing to put the work in and if they can show that they want it, then that's amazing. Now, even just recently, we've turned yet another corner, and we're talking about some youngsters now that we're really excited about. Young girl Kissy, Victor, Jacob. The list goes on and on. These are really quite young players that are already showing promise. Now, if you'd asked, okay, COVID's been a difficult period, but if you'd asked us a year or two ago, we might have been thinking, struggling a little bit here. And then all of a sudden, you know, you keep putting the work in and the effort in, as Max always does, and these players come along. And again, you find yourself, you're going away again, you're going with it again. So to answer your question, it can be difficult, but if you get people, and there are certainly players now that I really enjoy working with, you know, whether or not their standard is tremendous at the moment, it's because they're putting the effort in and they obviously enjoy it, then you get a lot back from that. It's
somebody, I think, asked me on my show what turns me on to coaching. Was it, you know, having Desmond Douglas at a national camp? Was it going to New Zealand? Was it, you know, winning the Israeli Open? Whatever it was. No, it's the willingness to learn. If you can give me a player, even if his potential is only Division 12 of the Aberdeen League, if that player is willing to learn, then that's a player I'm willing to spend the time on. Yeah. Now, David, I'm going to ask you your own coaching style. We can obviously still play it, and he's very stroke pretty. You know, he was good to watch, nice to watch. So are you more of an on-table coach or an off-table coach, or a bit of both?
Predominantly on-table. So from a young age, I think, to me, one of the most important things is trying to get a good contact with the ball. You know, obviously, technique's important, but learning that, trying to effectively brush the ball. Well, that's my philosophy, as opposed to being perhaps more of a flat hitter, you know, trying to get people in getting the right technique. So very much on table, and I still enjoy that. Feeding, watching, and giving feedback.
Yeah. How's your time on the table these days, Max? Do you stand off it, or do you like to go on and have a hit?
I like to go and have a hit, but I've got to be careful who I pick to have a hit with. And it's usually the little nippers.
Good on you.
But I enjoy it because it's better in a way, so that's good. So, but
Charlie,
the table's no more.
Brilliant. And Charlie, do you still like to have a hit, or are you so absorbed with the umpiring now that you never get time?
Umpiring, well, you know, a year's gone, and probably my umpiring days have gone as well. But no, I like to go. Just gone back to the Sports Village last week for the first time since December, obviously. I'm a beginners coach.
Great.
These are the polishers. I'm just a beginners coach.
That's probably Max will tell you that first 40 hours of learning becomes permanent. So if you get a bad coach at the start, it takes a long time to get it corrected. So you're the most important coaches of all. And it's not Max when he's looking after the national teams, because the players are already formed. Would you agree with that, Max? That first 40 hours?
I would definitely agree with it. You know, you maybe don't see something there, but the first thing is for them to come and they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's a great starting point. You know, then suddenly they start to show you something, and that makes you feel really good. It makes them really good as a girl. So
Brilliant. Can we just have the last few minutes on the north of Scotland? A fantastic tournament. It's probably the hardest for you all to run, on the basis that you're used to traveling all the time, and it's only once a year. You're asking everyone else to travel. Did you find that quite challenging, Charlie? Do you want to pick up that first, or?
Well, it has been. There was a few years it didn't run, and of course they had to before my time of involvement, they had to consolidate it with the Midland at Disk in Dundee, and sometimes at the Bells Centre in Perth, just to try and get the numbers back up again. But with the arrival of the Sports Village, and the facilities there. It's made life a lot easier. But it's been a regular tournament since 1934. And there's a few years it dropped by the wayside for a number of reasons in the 80s, but it quickly got resurrected again and became really popular. Dennis Neal came to Summerhill Academy at one point and lifted the North Open. There's been a few others that have lifted it as well from outside Scotland.
Excellent. I mean, there's so few what I would call traditional open tournaments. We've got to do all we can, the west of Scotland, and obviously we've got the Edinburgh Open, and sometimes we have the South Asian, not quite sure of its name. So David, north of Scotland, well, what's your views on it?
Well, first of all, it's a really touchy subject because I kept losing in the final. And one year, I never, ever lost to Callum Gerrard. I hope he's listening. Callum, you never beat me. And the one time he chose to beat me was the North of Scotland final. Callum Gerrard, of all people. Left-hander, he's only got a forehand. Very tight serve. And I managed to lose. Very touchy subject.
Yeah.
I used to get quite emotive about a fella recently with somebody from Drumchapel, the West of Scotland players not supporting it as well as they should have. Yet our North players were expected to travel all the time to obviously West of Scotland tournaments, Dundee, whatever. But there was times where they would make an effort and they'd take a bus up, just in the drum guys would make a night of it in Aberdeen after the tournament. But I don't think they've supported it as well as they could and should have. Is the honest answer to that.
David, can I just say to you that was in season 95-96 at the Beach Leisure Centre. And it's the only time that Callum's ever won it.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, just to get in there on the final thing on Callum, I beat him in the Wigtonshire Open men's final. Okay. So I did get Wigtonshire, a really big tournament.
Yeah.
Sorry if anybody's listening from Wigtonshire. Really sorry.
And didn't Pete Shaw beat you in one of the finals there as well, the Wigtonshire?
Thanks for reminding me of that. Again, if Pete's listening, you never beat me. And then you choose to beat me in a final as well. Anyway.
Yeah, Max, and north of Scotland, I always enjoy my visits there, and long may it continue.
I do believe what Charlie said, that I don't think recently we're getting the right support. But we do put on a good tournament and we work hard to get sponsors for some sort of decent money or whatever. But it is a tournament, I think it's a good tournament. We should never stop having it. Problem is, probably the ESV is the best place to have it, but the prices are quite hefty. And, trying to make some sort of profit or whatever.
I imagine, when I first came to Scotland, the oil industry was thriving. It was very difficult to get B&Bs. You used to struggle to get Peter McQueen and myself. In fact, once we had to even swap bed and breakfasts to get 3 different nights. I imagine now, if players play in the north of Scotland, the accommodation will be a lot easier. Is that right?
Yeah, I would have thought so. The travel lodges and the Premier Inn has helped to standardise the accommodation. They're fairly nearby to the sports village, certainly. So that's helped.
Good. Well, it's important we support all the tournaments. Because whether it's say the Wigtownshire, which is the furthest south when they've organised it, or the Dumfries Open, or way up to Aberdeen, it's important that we all help each other to make them a good tournament. Right, I'm going to ask, I said this hour ago quickly, didn't
David,
I?
can I interrupt you? I've got one question for you, if you could answer it for me. Do you know when we're allowed to start using multi-ball again?
Oh, I think, everybody, I think the ones who are playing are. But I think that, that is a because technically you're supposed to have the one ball and you clean it, aren't you? So
Yeah.
don't know. I'll put that in my too hard basket. And
if I was picking up all the balls myself and they're not touching them,
Yeah.
would that not suffice? Nobody else touches them except me.
I thought during COVID that generally speaking, although this was my own point of view, if I was the dictator of table tennis, I think we could have gone on. I would have a yellow ball like this. You would have a white ball. So when I serve, I would play with a yellow ball. When you serve, we play with a white ball. Because we're 9 feet apart, because that's the length of the table, and we wouldn't change ends. So that would have been my answer. But the multi-ball question, I don't know. I just don't know. But I promise I'll find. Anyway, the future. What's for the future for Aberdeen? I think I'll start with David, then Max, and I'll get Charlie to finish us. David, the future for Aberdeen as you see it in the north?
I mean, very positive. I still think with this, obviously, we've had serious interruptions for obvious reasons, but we're back again, and there's a lot of good young players. So I think Charlie would be better, and Max would be better about the local league and that sort of thing. But when it comes to youngsters, even at my age, I'm quite excited about working with them in the future.
Good. Max, the future?
Yes, I would echo more or less what David said. The leagues, I think, are still going well if we get things started again. But like everything else, it takes time, and you just got to keep working. You know, you want it, you'll do it.
Yeah. And Charlie, last word with you.
Yeah, my concern would be the cost to parents for their children to participate, and the cost of entry to facilities should be reduced for youngsters, because table tennis is not a cheap sport to progress in. It's maybe a cheap sport to start with, but not to progress in. And you can look at the profile of the kids that come to the sports village, and I would have to say they're from the more affluent sectors of society. That's so it's not getting out to the masses at the levels it should do or could do, despite the work that the likes of Dick Ferro's done in recent years with schools and that sort of thing. So it needs to be expanded in schools. But the initiative needs to come from the schools. They need to be willing. But it's not always the best subject to teach at schools, because you need so many tables to keep the whole class entertained for a period, unless they can switch between badminton and table tennis. So schools tend to shy away from it a wee bit, in my opinion.
To be fair to ESV, just a quick one. When I was going into schools, I was certainly going into 2 or 3 very deprived areas, and they wanted that ESV. And I was only sort of going to schools that were within a reasonable radius of ESV, in other words, not outside Aberdeen or other parts of Aberdeen, near the fence. I do agree with Charlie. I think the costs are a little bit high. I'd agree with that for sure. They've been very good that way. I was certainly going into fairly, I would say, private areas, get into schools.
But I mean, it's I would always say table tennis, it's space efficient, it's not dictated by weather, and it is relatively cheap to play compared to a lot of sport. Fantastic game, and guys, it's been a really interesting evening. I knew it would be, and all I've got to say now is a big thank you to David Lowe, Max Singer, Charlie Flint, but most of all to Donald Perry, who sit there quietly in the background, allowing everybody else to take the limelight, but he's the man who's put it all together. And obviously to Matt Norbury, who's also in the background. So thank you all. And next week, we've got Sam Walker Part 2. We're going to talk about the Olympic years and also his battles against injury. And it's not all been plain sailing. See you all next